He just put it in bold.
So, Avatar. With Avatar: The Way of Water having come and gone, smashing box office records like they were made of wet tissue paper, I figured it's time we actually sat down and took a look at this franchise, because it's a weird one. We are talking about the James Cameron box office behemoth that captured the world's attention back in 2009. A movie so big that it took over 10 years and nearly 20 films of superhero build-up to try and knock it off its perch at the top. And then not knock it off, and then knock it off again. I don't know. They just got to stop re-releasing these freaking movies, man. It's cheating. But here we are. Avatar 1 is the highest grossing film in history. Avatar 2 is right up there with it. Another multi-billion-dollar hit. Another IMAX must-see event that had people mortgaging their houses to buy 3D glasses. By every financial metric known to man, this franchise is the undisputed king of cinema. But here is the problem. Here is the thing that keeps me up at night. Years have passed since The Way of Water dropped, and nothing. Silence. Where are the quotes? Where are the memes? Where is the lasting cultural footprint? Think about it. When Avengers Endgame came out, you couldn't go 5 seconds without seeing I Love You 3000. When the Star Wars prequels came out, as much as we hated them at the time, they gave us decades of discourse. Even Lord of the Rings 20 years later has a fandom so strong they can speak Elvish better than I can speak English. Those franchises live in our collective cultural memory. They occupy space in our brains. Avatar, in comparison, it just evaporates. It's like a fever dream. You go to the theater, you have your mind blown for 3 hours by blue people riding dragons, you walk out and poof, it's gone. It leaves no trace. So why? Why is Avatar simultaneously the biggest thing on the planet and also culturally invisible? Is it just because the story is simplistic? Is it because we hate the papyrus font? Or is James Cameron playing a completely different game than everyone else? To understand this paradox and to understand why we keep giving this man our money for movies we barely remember, we need to go back. We need to revisit where it all began. So I sat down and rewatched these two movies just right before the third one. And this is my story on the Avatar franchise. So let's rewind the clock. It's 2009. The MCU is just a baby with Iron Man. Obama is settling into the White House, and I still had hope for the future. And then James Cameron drops Avatar. It is very easy to sit here in 2025 with our cynicism fully leveled up and clown on this movie. It's easy to make the blue Pocahontas jokes, but in 2009, Avatar was a revolution. We have to acknowledge the context here. Before Avatar, 3D was a gimmick. Do you remember Spy Kids 3D or Shark Boy and Lava Girl? It was stuff flying out of the screen to poke you in the eye just to justify the extra $3 on the ticket price. But Cameron, the mad scientist that he is, he looked at this gimmick and said, no, I can make this art. He spent years developing the Fusion camera system, obsessing over depth perception, brightness, and color. He was trying to open a window to create a photographic diorama that we could fall into, and damn it, he succeeded. I remember I was in the theater putting on those clunky plastic glasses that always managed to be smudge-proof resistant. Seriously, why are they always so greasy? And having my jaw hit the floor. The moment Jake Sully wakes up in his avatar body and runs through the forest, that was alchemy. The motion capture technology was a breakthrough on a level we hadn't seen since Gollum. I suppose for the first time, CGI characters didn't look like dead-eyed wax figures from a horror game. They actually looked alive. They used these ridiculous helmet cameras to capture every twitch of the eye, every micro expression, bridging that uncanny valley gap that had plagued digital characters for years. Even today, Pandora remains arguably the most detailed fictional world ever put to screen, and it's not pretty colors alone. Magic is in the whole ecosystem. Cameron somehow designed a biology. The way the plants glow when you step on them, the way the floating mountains mess with the instruments, the way the banshees breathe. It was hypnotic. It was the kind of visual spectacle that makes you realize why we built movie theaters in the first place. Right now, after rewatching Avatar, this movie still looks great, though the graphics level feels outdated a tiny bit, but the small screen is not an option for this movie. Once again, I cemented that idea in my mind. Technically speaking, Avatar is a masterpiece. It is a towering achievement of engineering. A large chunk of the visual effects we see in modern blockbusters, from the Planet of the Apes reboots to Thanos, owe a massive debt to what Weta Digital and Cameron pulled off here. It was a visual revolution, but, and this is a massive but, big enough to crush a Thanada, once the visual high wore off, what were we actually left with? We were left with a story that has the depth of a puddle in a drought. Let's not beat around the bush here. Avatar is Dances with Wolves in space. It is the most generic paint-by-numbers white savior joins the natives to fight the evil corporate colonizer story that you could possibly write. You can predict every single beat of this film from the first 10 minutes. The outsider arrives, he's skeptical, he meets the chief's daughter, he learns their ways, there's a training montage, he falls in love, he gets exiled when his betrayal is revealed, he comes back with a bigger bird, and he saves the day. Boom. That is the movie. It is absurdly simple, and I know some people are going to say, but simple is good. It's a universal story. And sure, but there is simple and then there is lazy. The motivation for the human beings here, Unobtainium. I mean, come on, Unobtainium. That is the laziest placeholder name in the history of fiction. It sounds like something a 5-year-old would come up with when playing with Legos. We need to find the hard to getium. It's frankly a little embarrassing that a script with hundreds of millions of dollars behind it settled on that. And then there's the white savior trope, or the mighty whitey, if you want to be specific. Jake Sully, a guy with zero cultural knowledge of the Na'vi, shows up, learns their entire ways of life in like 3 months, and suddenly becomes the greatest warrior they have ever seen. He tames the big red bird that nobody else can tame. He leads the tribes. It's a little comical that Cameron creates this massive anti-colonial pro-indigenous allegory, and the only way to save the indigenous people is for the white military guy to do it for them. But the biggest issue is the characters. I mean, they're barely characters. They are archetypes made of cardboard. Now let's look at our villain, Colonel Miles Quaritch, played by Stephen Lang. Yes, Stephen Lang is chewing the scenery like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet, and he is entertaining as hell. But he is a cartoon. He is military bad guy 101. He drinks coffee while piloting a mech suit in a war zone. He literally says lines like, "You're not in Kansas anymore." I mean, come on, Jim. You wrote Terminator. You wrote Aliens. You gave us the T-1000 and the Alien Queen. You know how to write nuanced, terrifying antagonists. Quaritch is just a guy who really likes war. He's a ruthless fanatic, a caricature of jingoistic rhetoric. He's so comically evil that Billy Zane in Titanic looks like a complex, morally grey character by comparison. And our corporate villain, Parker Selfridge, his name is literally Selfish. Subtlety was clearly not in the budget here. He's just a slimy corporate suit who cares about quarterly reports. That is it. That's the depth. And Sam Worthington as Jake Sully. Look, Sam seems like a nice guy, but in this movie, he is void of charisma. He's bland, he's generic, and the only reason I care about him in this movie is because he's driving the cool blue Avatar body. He's basically an idiot with no life experience who exists solely so the audience has someone to ask, "Hey, what's that cool plant?" And as for the supporting cast, Dr. Grace Augustine is just Sigourney Weaver playing Sigourney Weaver, which is fine, but does anyone remember Norm or Max? No, you don't, because they are exposition machines, nothing more. So, we have a film with a story you've seen 1,000 times. Characters, you forget the moment the credits roll, and dialogue that is often painfully on the nose. And yet, it made nearly $3 billion. It became the highest grossing film of all time. Why? Because Cameron sold us a ticket to another planet. In 2009, cinemas turned into portals where you went to leave Earth. You went to visit Pandora. For 3 hours, you could escape your mundane life, put on those glasses, and exist in a bioluminescent jungle where you could fly on dragons. Even at home, rewatching it now felt like a small trip to Pandora, but airplane window style for sure. Immersion became the primary emotional driver, the ultimate escapism. The plot was simple by design. It was a feature, not a bug. By making the story so incredibly basic, protect things you love, Cameron removed all cultural barriers. You didn't need to understand complex English idioms or American politics to get Avatar. Blue people good, military guys bad. Nature pretty, explosions cool. It is a universal language. It worked in America, it worked in China, it worked in Europe. It was the perfect cocktail for a global blockbuster because it required zero brain power to enjoy, just functioning eyeballs. People were literally reporting post-Avatar depression syndrome. That is a real thing. Look it up. People were so enamored with the world Cameron built that they were genuinely depressed they had to wake wake up and go back to their job at Wendy's the next day. They felt strangely empty when the movie ended. That is the power of what Cameron did. And this brings us to the core paradox of Avatar. It is a masterpiece of technology, a masterpiece of world building, and a masterpiece of spectacle. But as a piece of narrative storytelling, it is mediocre at best. It prioritizes the engineering of emotion through imagery over narrative complexity. It manipulates you with sad music and dying animals rather than earning your tears through character growth. But it worked. The box office drop in the second weekend was something ridiculous like 11%. That is unheard of. People just kept going back, not to see Jake Sully, but to see Pandora, to feel that immersion again. A perfect storm of new technology, director clout, and pure spectacle that masked a weak script. And surely James Cameron knew that for the sequel he needed to up the ante. Surely after 13 years of writing he would fix the story issues, add depth to the characters, and give us a plot that wasn't just a rehash of the first one. Surely. Well, enter Avatar: The Way of Water. And as it turns out, Cameron decided to do the exact same thing, but on an even larger scale. But it took 13 years. 13 years. Do you realize how long that is in pop culture time? In that span, the entire MCU rose, peaked, and started its slow, painful, CGI-infused descent into mediocrity. Star Wars literally died, was resurrected by J.J. Abrams, died again because of Rian Johnson, resurrected again, and then finally buried by Palpatine somehow returning. We lived through a pandemic. TikTok happened. The world fundamentally changed. And finally, James Cameron emerged from his submarine, wiped the sea salt off his brow, and handed us Avatar: The Way of Water. And guess what? It is arguably the most beautiful thing I have ever seen on a screen. And it is also one of the most frustratingly stupid movies I have ever had to sit through. Because if Avatar 1 was a proof of concept, a tech demo with a basic story attached, Avatar 2 is that concept taken to its absolute extreme. It is a movie that doubles down on every single strength of the original, injecting it with steroids and shooting it at 48 frames per second, while simultaneously taking every single weakness of the original and putting it under a magnifying glass. Let's start with the positives, because I'm not a monster, and I believe in giving credit where credit is due. And the credit is due here. The visual leap from 2009 to 2022 is nothing short of witchcraft. We all know water is the final boss of CGI. It's the nightmare fuel for VFX artists. Usually in movies, CGI water looks like jelly, or it moves too fast, or it just looks off. You watch Aquaman or Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and the underwater scenes look exactly like what they are. Actors hanging on wires in a dry studio with a fan blowing in their face while a computer draws bubbles around them. It looks fake, it feels weightless. But James Cameron is a psychopath in the best way possible. He looked at the industry standard of dry for wet filming and said, absolutely not. He built a 900,000-gallon water tank. He threw the actors in there. He made Kate Winslet hold her breath for 7 minutes. Yeah, 7 minutes, because air bubbles from scuba gear would interfere with the motion capture markers. He literally invented new technology to capture performance underwater. They used deep learning and neural networks to simulate the physics of water. Droplets, waves, foam, the surface tension, not by animating it, but by simulating it mathematically. The result? It is mind-blowing. There are shots in this movie where if you told me it was a National Geographic documentary filmed on an alien planet, I would believe you without hesitation. The way the light refracts through the surface, the way the skin of the Metkayina clan reacts to the moisture, it is flawless. It makes the latest Marvel movies look like they were rendered on a PlayStation 2. And with facial capture, Weta Digital somehow leveled up again. In the first movie, the Na'vi looked great, but there was still that tiny hint of Uncanny Valley. Here, it's gone. Like, it's gone. They stopped using the old blend shape system and moved to neural network that understands facial muscles. So now they are simulating the tension of muscles under the skin. You can see the doubt in Jake's eyes. You can see the teenage angst in Loak's sneer. Even at home rewatching it, it still looks incredible. Technically, The Way of Water is a flex. It is James Cameron standing on top of a mountain screaming, "I am better than you," at every other director in Hollywood. And he's right. But, and you knew there was a massive but coming, once you stop staring at the water physics, you have to start listening listening to the dialogue, and that is where the headache begins. If Avatar 1 had a thin story, Avatar 2 has a bloated, messy, repetitive story that somehow takes 3 hours and 12 minutes to tell us basically nothing new. James Cameron wrote a sequel and the remake both at the same time. The structure of this film is identical to the first one. It's the fish out of water trope, literally. In the first movie, Jake Sully goes to the forest and has to learn the ways of the Omaticaya. He sucks at first, he falls off the horse, he learns to ride the bird, he earns their respect. In this movie, Jake and his family go to the ocean and have to learn the ways of the Metcaina. They suck at first, they fall off the Ilu, they learn to ride the skimwing, they earn their respect. It feels like the second level of an old video game. Congratulations, you beat the jungle level. Welcome to the water level. Same mechanics, new skins. And the motivation for all this, it's somehow even lazier than the first film. I made fun of Unobtainium and I thought surely it can't get stupider than that. Well, Avatar 2 introduces us to Amrita. What is Amrita? It's a yellow goo extracted from the brains of space whales. Sorry, Tolkien. And it stops human aging. It's worth $80 million a vial. So we went from a rock that solves the energy crisis to anti-aging cream for billionaires. That is the driving force of the human invasion. It feels so small and petty. The movie throws in a line about Earth is dying, but it's glossed over so fast you might miss it if you blink. Instead, we focus on a whaling operation that feels like Captain Planet villains wrote the script. Now, maybe the characters get better here. No, the cast is absolutely overstuffed. We have Jake and Neytiri, but they are barely the main characters anymore. Jake is morphed from a generic hero into the strict military dad trope. His entire arc in this movie is just yelling at his kids. Stand down, you're grounded. Sir, yes, sir. It's exhausting. He treats his family like a platoon, which is a valid character flaw, but it's not exactly thrilling to watch for 3 hours. And Neytiri? Poor Zoe Saldana, man. She screams, she cries, she shoots an arrow, and then she disappears for 40 minutes. She is painfully underutilized, reduced to the role of suffering wife until the final act where she goes full John Wick mode for 5 minutes, which is awesome, but too little too late. Instead, the movie focuses on the kids, and this brings us to the dialogue. If I have to hear the word bro or cuz one more time, I'm going to punch a hole in my monitor. Bro, you see that? Cuz, let's go. Bro, cuz. It sounds like a 68-year-old man wrote what he thinks Gen Z teenagers sound like. It is cringe-inducing. It takes you right out of this alien world. You're looking at these majestic 9-foot-tall blue aliens in a hyper-realistic ocean, and they talk like they're skipping class at a suburban high school in California. We have Loak, the rebellious middle child who is clearly being set up as the new main character. We have Netayam, the perfect older brother who exists solely to die and give the others motivation. Spoiler alert, but come on, you saw that coming from the first scene. We have Tuck, who is just there to be cute and get captured. But okay, Kiri is interesting. She's the Immaculate Conception daughter of Grace Augustine's Avatar, but she is voiced by Sigourney Weaver, a 73-year-old woman voicing a 14-year-old girl. Now, Sigourney Weaver is a legend, but there is a cognitive dissonance here that my brain just cannot handle. Every time Kiri speaks, I don't hear a teenager. I hear Ripley. It's distracting and weird. It's the audio version of the Uncanny Valley. But the worst offender, the character that makes me want to pull my hair out, Spider. Spider is the human son of Quaritch, who was left behind because babies can't go in cryo. Sure, whatever. He runs around in loincloth with dreadlocks, hissing like a cat and painting stripes on himself. He is Tarzan if Tarzan was an annoying theater kid. His entire motivation is wishy-washy. I hate the humans, but that's my dad. But he's bad, but I'll save him anyway. And speaking of saving him, somehow Quaritch returned. Yes, they cloned the villain from the first movie. They took Stephen Lang, put his memories on a USB drive, uploaded him into a blue body and said, do it again. This is a massive storytelling mistake. By bringing Quaritch back as a recombinant, Cameron has killed the stakes. If you can just back up your soldiers' consciousness to the cloud and download them into new bodies when they die, then death means nothing. There is no finality. Stephen Lang is great, don't get me wrong. He is menacing, he is a force of nature, but he is still a cartoon. In the first movie, he was evil military guy. In this movie, he is evil military guy in blue. He has a brief moment of bonding with his son Spider, but it doesn't really go anywhere. He's just there to be the boss fight. It's lazy. You have an entire universe of potential villains and you just hit Control-C, Control-V on the guy we already beat. And what makes it harder is that the movie is over 3 hours long and the entire middle hour, nothing really happens. I'm serious, the plot basically stops dead. I spent an hour watching Loak bond with a whale. I watched Kiri look at sand. I watched Jake learn to hold his breath. Now, visually, this is the best part of the movie. It's a vibe. It's ASMR, National Geographic Pandora edition. But narratively, it is a slog. It's James Cameron showing off his water physics engine and forcing us to look at it. Look at the bubbles. I spent 5 years on these bubbles. Look at them. Emotional beats feel manipulative. Cameron knows he can't get you to cry over the characters because they are thin as paper, so he goes for the cheap shot, hurting animals. There is a 10-minute sequence of a Tolkien hunt that is harrowing. It's brutal, it's sad, but it's not sad because of the story's power or strong scene. It's sad because watching a mother whale get harpooned is inherently sad. It's emotional manipulation, not really storytelling. So where does that leave us? Avatar: The Way of Water is a flawed masterpiece. It is a technological marvel that pushes the boundaries of what is possible in cinema. It is a visual feast that makes every other blockbuster look cheap. But beneath the surface, it is a hollow shell. It is a rehash of the first movie with more characters, less focus, and a villain who refuses to stay dead. It proves once and for all that James Cameron is not a writer. He is kinda an architect, an engineer. He builds worlds better than anyone else in history, but he populates them with archetypes and cliches. And yet, despite the bro dialogue, despite the cloned villain, despite the 3-hour runtime and the whale brain juice plot, despite me complaining about it for the last 10 minutes, I watched it several times. You watched it. We all watched it. It made $2.3 billion. It is the third highest grossing film of all time. Why? Are we stupid? Are we just magpies attracted to shiny objects? Or is there something else happening here? Something that goes beyond plot and character. To understand Avatar, you have to stop judging it as a movie. You have to start judging it as something else entirely, because Avatar is a drug and we're all addicted. So, we have established that the script is basically a napkin scribble. We have established that the characters are cardboard cutouts. We have established that the cultural footprint of this franchise is smaller than Ant-Man's shoe size. And yet, Avatar: The Way of Water made $2.3 billion. As I said, it's the third highest grossing film of all time, sitting right next to the first Avatar, which is number 1. How? Why? Are we all just stupid? Are we simpletons distracted by jingling keys and shiny colors? Well, yes. But also no. It is a bit more complicated than that. The reason audiences still rush to theaters for Avatar despite the bro dialogue, despite the recycled plot, despite the internet insisting that nobody cares about it, it's actually very simple. Avatar is not a movie, it is an event. It's an experience. When you buy a ticket for an Avatar movie, you are paying for a 3-hour vacation. You are paying for a round-trip ticket to a planet that feels more real than the one we actually live on. James Cameron understands something that almost every other filmmaker in Hollywood has forgotten. The power of true, unadulterated immersion. Most directors try to tell you a story. James Cameron tries to build you a world, and there is a massive difference. Think about it. When you go to Disneyland, do you complain that the plot of It's a Small World is repetitive? Do you get off Space Mountain and say, well, the pacing in the second act was a bit slow? No, you don't, because you aren't there for a story. You are there for a ride. You are there to be transported. Avatar is the cinematic equivalent of a theme park ride. It is a sensory journey where the plot is merely a vehicle to get you from one breathtaking vista to the next. The story exists solely to give the camera a reason to move. And this works because James Cameron is who? He's an architect and an engineer. He hired linguists to create a functional language. He hired botanists to design plants that make biological sense. He hired astrophysicists to model the orbit of Pandora around a gas giant. He approached this movie not like a storyteller, but like a scientist. This is why Pandora feels so incredibly grounded. It has verisimilitude. The camera moves with a handheld shake as if there is an actual cameraman running through the jungle trying to keep up with the action. It tricks your brain into thinking, wait, is this a documentary? And that level of detail, that obsessive neurotic commitment to world building creates the ultimate form of escapism. When you watch a Marvel movie, you are watching actors on a green screen. You know it, they know it. It feels weightless. It feels like content. When you watch Avatar, you are watching a simulation. And honestly, in 2025, when the real world is on fire and everything is expensive and depressing, the appeal of spending 3 hours in a bioluminescent paradise where the water is perfect and you can fly on a dragon is, oh, it's pretty damn high. It is eye protein, which is nutritious for your brain's desire to see something beautiful. On a technical level, these films are masterpieces. That is their true identity. They are tech demos with a budget of yes. James Cameron is the only director in history who can take an original idea, not a comic book, not a book adaptation, not a reboot, and turn turn it into the biggest financial success in history. Twice. He combined the techno-dystopia of Terminator, the military fetishism of Aliens, the melodrama of Titanic, and the underwater obsession of The Abyss into one giant blue package, and we all ate it up. We ate it up because it is visually overwhelming. It is sensory overload in the best possible way. The visual splendor is so high that it literally bullies your brain into ignoring the flaws. You sit there thinking, this dialogue is terrible. Oh look, a space whale. And suddenly you don't care about the dialogue anymore. So Avatar succeeds not because it is a great film in the traditional sense, but because it offers something no other film can. A tangible, believable, hyper-realistic escape hatch from reality. But, and here is the catch, this reliance on spectacle over substance, this prioritization of engineering over emotion, this is exactly why Avatar leaves such a weak cultural footprint. Because while we remember the ride, do we remember why we got on it in the first place? So we have established that Avatar is an engineering marvel. We have established that it is a theme park ride disguised as a movie. We have established that James Cameron is a wizard who can make us pay $20 for a ticket just to look at his fancy water. But why, in the name of Awa, does this franchise have absolutely zero cultural footprint? I want you to try something right now. Without Googling it, name 3 characters from Avatar who aren't Jake Sully or Neytiri. Oh wait, exactly, you can't. You might remember that military guy or Sigourney Weaver's character, but you don't know their names. You don't know their arcs. You don't care about them. Now, compare that to Star Wars. You know who Han Solo is. You know who Obi-Wan Kenobi is. You probably even know who Glup Shido is because Star Wars fans are insane and write wiki pages for background extras. Compare that to the MCU. Even after the disaster that was Phase 4, you know who Thanos is. You know who Loki is. You can quote their lines. I am inevitable. Puny God. These things are burned into our collective consciousness. Compare it to Harry Potter. People literally categorize their entire personalities based on which Hogwarts house they belong to. Oh, I'm such a Hufflepuff. Nobody says, oh, I'm such a Metcaina. That's not a thing. So why is it that the 2 highest grossing movies in the history of human civilization, movies that literally everyone and their grandmother have seen, have left no trace? First, there is nothing for the culture to cling to. Culture is built on shared language. It's built on quotes. It's built on memes. It's built on moments that we can reference in conversation. The Dark Knight gave us Why So Serious? The Lord of the Rings gave us One Does Not Simply Walk into Mordor. Titanic, James Cameron's other monster hit, gave us I'm the King of the World, and the eternal debate about whether Jack could fit on the door. He totally could, by the way. Avatar gave us I See You. That is it. That is the entire cultural contribution of a $5 billion franchise. A phrase that sounds like something a creep says to you from the bushes. And let's talk about the memes. The only lasting meme from this entire franchise isn't about the story or the characters or the world. It's about the font of the movie. Ryan Gosling doing a sketch on SNL about the papyrus font is more culturally relevant than the actual plot of the movie. That is insane. That is actually hilarious and depressing at the same time. Second, the story is too universal to be iconic. We touched on this earlier, but it's crucial. James Cameron designed these movies to have zero friction. He wanted them to be understood by everyone, everywhere, from Iowa to Indonesia. To do that, he had to sand off all the edges. He had to make the story so broad, so archetypal, that it lost any specific flavor. Universality often equals a lack of identity. Star Wars is weird. It has incestuous siblings and space wizards and political trade disputes. Harry Potter is weird. It has British boarding school politics and jelly beans that taste like earwax. Avatar isn't weird. It's Pocahontas. It's a story you already know told in a language you already speak. It is the narrative equivalent of vanilla ice cream. Everyone likes vanilla ice cream. Nobody hates vanilla ice cream, but nobody starts a fan club for fucking vanilla ice cream. Third, the world is more memorable than the people. When you think of Avatar, you don't think of Jake Sully. Jake Sully is a cardboard cutout. He is a dry cookie. Probably the most boring protagonist to ever lead a billion-dollar franchise. Even in the sequel, where they tried to give him dad energy, he's still just there. When you think of Avatar, you think of the floating mountains, you think of the banshees, you think of the bioluminescent forest at night. You remember the place, you don't remember the people. Pandora is the main character. The biomes are the drama. The visual effects are the emotional core, but you can't quote a biome. You can't make a meme out of a floating mountain. You can't have a passionate debate about the character arc of a tree. Fourth, the enormous gap between the films killed the continuity of the fanbase. 13 years is a freaking lifetime time. In internet years, it is an eon. Fandoms survive on momentum. They need constant feeding. The MCU kept us hooked because there was always another movie, another show, another trailer just around the corner. Star Wars, for better or worse, never really went away. Avatar disappeared. It literally just vanished. For over a decade, asking someone if they liked Avatar was like asking them if they liked a specific dream they had in 2009. Yeah, I remember it was cool. There were blue people, but I don't really remember what happened. I rewatched the movie just now and it's disappeared like sand through the hands of Kiri. You can't build a culture on a fading memory. Memes and cultural growth require repetition. They require a community constantly engaging with the material, but for 13 years, the only people engaging with Avatar was James Cameron and his team of scuba divers. And finally, Avatar is the ultimate see it, love it, forget it movie. It is experiential cinema. It is a sugar rush for your eyes. Think of it like a firework display. When you are watching the fireworks, you are mesmerized, you are oohing and ahhing, you are pointing at the sky saying, look at that one. It is an intense visceral experience. But 10 minutes after the fireworks stop, can you describe the third explosion? Can you quote the sound of the rocket made? No, you just remember that it was pretty. Avatar is a 3-hour fireworks display. It is designed to be consumed in the moment, processed by your visual cortex, and then discarded to make room for the next shiny thing. It's like visiting Disneyland. You have an amazing day, the rides are thrilling, the atmosphere is magical, the corn dogs are expensive but delicious, but you don't go home and quote the Haunted Mansion ride to your friends for the next 10 years. You don't build your personality around It's a Small World. You just say, yeah, Disneyland was great, and then you move on. Avatar is a vacation, and like most vacations, once you get back to reality, the details start to fade. And this brings us to the most important question. The question that hangs over the future of this franchise like a giant floating rock. We know Avatar 3 is coming. We know Avatar 4 and 5 are being threatened, promised to us. So are we doomed to repeat this cycle forever? Will Avatar 3 be another masterpiece of technology that breaks the box office and then vanishes into the ether? Or can James Cameron actually turn this theme park ride into a legend? We are staring down the barrel of Avatar Fire and Ash, or whatever cool title Cameron decides to bestow upon us from his submarine throne. And the question on everyone's mind, or at least the question on my mind, as I try to justify spending another $25 on an IMAX ticket, is simple. Is this going to change? Are we finally going to get a story that sticks, or are we stuck in a time loop of blue people, bad dialogue, and billion-dollar box office receipts? If we look at the trajectory of this franchise, the answer is painfully obvious. We are watching the most expensive video game Let's Play in history. I mentioned it earlier briefly, but want to dive deeper this time. Think about it. Avatar 1 was the jungle level. It was the tutorial. We learned the controls. We learned how to fly the bird. We fought the boss in the mech suit. Avatar 2 was the water level. The physics changed. The mechanics got slippery. We got a new mount, the skimwing, and we fought the same boss in a mech suit. But this time he was blue. So logic dictates that Avatar 3 is the fire level. And that is exactly what the rumors are saying. James Cameron has hinted at the Ash people, a clan of Na'vi that are less kumbaya, hold hands with the trees, and more let's burn it all down. From a technological standpoint, this is going to be incredible. We know Weta Digital has solved water. They spent years simulating droplets and waves until they perfected it. Now they need a new headache. They need a new challenge to justify their paychecks. And what is harder to render than water? Fire, smoke, ash, magma. I guarantee you right now, there is a VFX artist at Weta crying at their desk because James Cameron just asked them to simulate the thermal dynamics of a Na'vi sweating while standing next to a volcano. And it's going to look glorious. It will be the best looking fire you have ever seen. It will make the Balrog look like a matchstick. Technologically, no doubt, Avatar 3 is going to be another benchmark. It will be another must-see event where you have to go to the theater just to verify that your eyes aren't lying to you. Cameron is going to show us new ways to make us feel the heat radiating off the screen. But narratively, oh boy, narratively, we are in for the exact same ride. If you think Cameron is going to suddenly pivot and write a complex Game of Thrones style political drama, you are delusional. He is going to give us Pocahontas 2 where she goes to London, but in space. The structure will remain the protect the family fortress arc. Jake Sully will still be a stressed out dad. Neytiri will still be underused. The kids, Loak and Kiri, are clearly being set up as the new protagonists, which means we are going to get even more teenage angst. Get ready for the bro counter to hit quadruple digits. And the villain. This is the definition of insanity. We are going to watch Jake Jake Sully fight Miles Quaritch for the third time. It's like Team Rocket in Pokemon. They show up, they cause trouble, they get blasted off again, and they come back next week with a slightly different robot. There is no nuance here. The conflict will remain black and white, nature good, technology bad. The Ash people might introduce a bad Na'vi dynamic, which is admittedly a little interesting, but knowing Cameron, it will be handled with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The environmental message will be blunt. First, it was save the forests, then it was save the whales. Next, it will be, I don't know, stop global warming, don't play with matches. And you know what the funniest part is? It doesn't matter. I can sit here and roast the predictable plot until I'm blue in the face. I can complain about the Ash people sounding like a rejected Avatar: The Last Airbender nation. I can moan about the lack of iconic quotes. But when Avatar 3 comes out, again, I will be there. You will be there too. We will all line up like lemmings. We all put on the 3D glasses. We will let James Cameron grab us by the eyeballs and drag us through a volcano for 3 hours, and it will make $2 billion. It is inevitable. Death, taxes, and James Cameron making $1 billion. And then a month later, we will forget that it happened. We will walk out of the theater saying, wow, the lava looked amazing, and then we will go home and we will stop thinking about it. There will be no memes, except maybe about the fire physics. There will be no I am your father moments. The cultural footprint will be as light as a feather. It is a cycle that seems destined to repeat itself until Avatar 5, where they probably go to space or something. We buy the ticket, we take the ride, we enjoy the sensory overload, and then we wipe our memory banks. It's the ultimate see it, love it, forget it franchise. But this brings us to the final point, the twist, if you will. I've spent this entire video tearing this franchise apart for its lack of story, its flat characters, and its cultural invisibility. I've compared it to theme park rides as an insult. I've called it a tech demo. But as I look forward to Avatar 3 and I realize that I am actually excited to see some blue guys surfing on lava, I have to ask myself a question. Is that actually a bad thing? Is it possible that we are judging a fish by its ability to climb a tree? Is it possible that the lack of cultural legacy isn't a bug but a feature? Maybe we've been looking at Avatar wrong the whole time. So to bring this one home, we have spent the last hour dissecting the biggest anomaly in cinema history. We have torn apart the script, laughed at the dialogue, memed the font, and questioned the sanity of a man who spent 13 years making a movie about space whales. But after all the criticism, after all the jokes about Unobtainium and the bro counter, we keep coming back to that one undeniable fact. Avatar is the king. It is the box office god that refuses to bleed. And I think I finally understand why. We have been judging Avatar by the wrong metrics. We have been judging it like a novel, looking for a complex character arc and Shakespearean dialogue. We have been judging it like a Marvel movie, looking for interconnectivity and memeable moments. But Avatar isn't a novel or a comic book. It is a cathedral. James Cameron didn't set out to write a myth that would define a generation like Star Wars. He didn't set out to create a character study like The Godfather. He set out to build the ultimate sensory playground. He wanted to create a simulation so perfect, so detailed, and so overwhelmingly beautiful that for 3 hours, you forget that you are sitting in a sticky theater eating stale popcorn. Just as we discovered previously, he is an architect, not a writer. And you don't look at a cathedral and complain that the stone gargoyles don't have a compelling backstory. You look at it and say, holy shit, how did they build that? Avatar is experiential cinema in its purest form. And in a modern Hollywood landscape that is currently drowning in content, there is something weirdly refreshing about that. Look at what we are getting right now. We are getting CGI slop that looks like it was rendered 2 weeks before release. We are getting multiversal cameos that exist solely to make you point at the screen. We are getting movies that are so drenched in irony and self-awareness that they are afraid to be sincere for even a single second. James Cameron, he doesn't know what irony is. He is 100% earnest. He believes in the blue people. He believes in the tree spirits. He believes in the whales, and he puts that sincerity on screen with a level of technical perfection that makes the rest of the industry look like amateurs. Maybe the lack of cultural legacy of Avatar isn't a flaw at all. Maybe it is the price of admission. When you trade mythology for immersion, you lose the quotes, but you gain the feeling. And feelings are harder to share online. You can tweet a quote, you can't tweet the sensation of vertigo you get when Jake Sully dives off a cliff. You can't tweet the feeling of holding your breath during the underwater scenes. That experience is personal, ephemeral. It happens in the dark, between you and the screen, and then it fades like a dream when the lights come up. And that is okay. We don't need every movie to be a lifestyle brand. We don't need every franchise to define our personality. Sometimes it is enough for a movie to just be a really, really cool place to visit. A $3 billion vacation, a technical masterpiece built on a foundation of narrative sand. It won't change your life. It won't make you rethink the human condition. You probably won't be quoting Avatar 3 to your grandkids, but when Avatar Fire and Ash drops, when James Cameron unleashes the volcanoes and the new physics engine, it's gonna be cool, because sometimes you just want to watch the fireworks. Sometimes you just want to turn off your brain, put on the glasses, and let the blue man ride the freaking dragon. And nobody, absolutely nobody, does that better than James Cameron. He is the mad king of the box office, and as long as he keeps building these worlds, we are going to keep visiting them, even if we can't remember a damn thing about them the next day. So, is Avatar a masterpiece? Yes. Is it garbage? Also yes. It is the Schrodinger's cat of cinema. It is the dumbest, smartest, most beautiful, most boring, most successful franchise of all time. And I honestly can't wait to see what he does next. Now look, if you manage to somehow sit through this entire video without falling into a coma or getting a headache from the sheer amount of blue light, please do me a massive favor and smash that subscribe button. We are tantalizingly close to 150,000 subscribers, and it would mean the world to me if we could hit that milestone before James Cameron finishes rendering the water or cosmic physics for Avatar 5 in the year 2048. At this rate, I'll be watching that premiere from a nursing home, yelling at the nurse because she forgot to charge my 3D glasses. But thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and remember, Papyrus is a perfectly valid font choice if you are a sociopath who enjoys watching graphic designers cry.